Hello, Reason. So why are you an activist in this field, or why are you interested in developing medicine against the diseases of old age?
So I suppose there are three answers to that, maybe three, possibly two. Originally, I woke up one day and decided I don't want to die. And then it took me a little while to figure out what to do about that because I knew nothing at the time. But later, I think, after I got things figured out, why do I still do it? The answer is I'm a utilitarian. And if you look at what is the best use you can make of your time to reduce human suffering, assuming you're one of those people who thinks that human suffering is a bad thing, the best thing you can do with your time is to help bring an end to aging, bring it under medical control. It's so much bigger than the next bigger thing, 100 times bigger, 1,000 times bigger than the next single cause of human pain and suffering. But it is obviously the case that you should be working on doing something about aging. And since I'm already there doing things, inertia keeps going, and I can keep justifying it by saying it's the most important thing I can be doing. So maybe that's a terrible thing, but it seems to be doing good work. So we'll let it slide.
So what exactly are you doing?
So I've been writing blogs and publishing online and doing general patient advocacy for the better part of 20 years. And that was through the growth of this community, trying to help it grow by being what you might say a dial tone in the early years, such that there was always a conversation that somebody could find and understand that there were people out there thinking about this when the community was too small to connect effectively. Later on, I started investing in the field and helping some of the early companies get started. This was fairly recently, comparatively. And then after that, I caught investor disease, which is when you invest in a company and you think that's easy, I could do that. Then you start a company. Then you learn whether you are right or wrong about that statement. So I started a company with Bill German last year to actually develop some of the projects that are not getting worked on, I think, aggressively enough. Uh, and to my mind, that is also doing some good here because in the end, it should alleviate a great deal of human suffering. Even if we fail, we will have advanced the state of the art to the point where it's obvious that somebody could make it work. And therefore, we attract more funding, more companies to work in these parts of the field and move forward the science and the medicine.
So yeah, great. So you're doing lots, and of course your blog, fightaging.org, is very famous. So you're doing, I think, one or two or three blog posts per day. It's yeah, sounds so. How much time do you invest in this?
Much less than people think,
Yeah,
actually. It's a finely tuned process by now. I would say about an hour a day on average. But
yeah.
there's a lot of helping automation to make it work more rapidly. The funny thing is that everything you read online, think of it as being written by a pathological and abnormal individual, because no normal individual can write content all the time, day in and day out. So it's a small population of unusual people who write everything that you read, because normal, ordinary people don't write much. So what this means for humanity is sort of an interesting question. But what it means for this community is that I wish there were more people out there writing things because it's a little hard to carry all by yourself. So I'm very happy to see groups like the Life Extension Advocacy Foundation publishing regular materials and having a stable of writers. But at this point, I'm not sure I could stop. It's a little bit stuck. So I'm going to keep writing these things until such time as I guess my hands swell or something.
Yeah, it's really great information. Yeah, and so with your company, what exactly are you working with your company?
So we are attempting to produce thymic rejuvenation, which is to say the thymus just above the heart, where the adaptive immune system T cells mature. It atrophies with age, turns into fat. All of the active tissue dies, and the result of that is that you get an old immune system that can't do anything properly. If you can just regrow the thymus, that solves about one third of that problem and is good enough on its own to just do on its own in order to get a beneficial result. In mice, it's pretty effective. It's very nice. In humans, we shall see how well that ends up. It's one part of, let's say, 3 or 4 parts, which you have to do in the whole immune system. The other 3 being you have to restore the hematopoietic stem cell population to a youthful degree. And you can do that to some degree by making refinement because it signals the bone marrow. The second is you have to kill off all of the bad immune cells because there's a lot of things in there causing autoimmunity or inflammation. They won't go away terribly quickly when you restore the fibers. So I think they have to be wiped. Just destroy them all and put them back. And that's feasible. It's not actively enough developed right now, but it is a very feasible project for somebody. And the third one is that you have to go do something about the lymph nodes in an old person, because the lymph nodes are necessary to the immune system's response to pathogens. It's where the immune cells coordinate. The lymph nodes become fibrotic with old age. They have a lot of senescent cells of fibrosis. So we think that something along the lines of senolytics would help with that. But it's definitely the case that there was a paper earlier this year where somebody showed that you could regrow the thymus in mice and not human primates, but the lymph nodes are in such a terrible state that they block the immune system from working, though it has extra T cells. So that's one of the things we're doing. The other thing that we're doing right now is that we licensed a program that was actually presented at Undoing Aging last year by Richard Honcannon, where you could add a pathway to any cell that allows it to break down arbitrary amounts of cholesterol. So if you give, let's say, macrophage cells the ability to break down arbitrary amounts of cholesterol, you can make them immune to the processes of atherosclerosis so that you no longer get plaques forming and the existing plaques should regress.
Oxidized cholesterol or normal cholesterol? Both.
Which I think is necessary because it's certainly possible for a macrophage to be overwhelmed just by volume of cholesterol, even though it's usually oxidized cholesterol that kicks in.
I think other research groups, they introduce new enzymes into the cell, right, to break down oxidized cholesterol. So
the Research Foundation is working on that, and they licensed it out, I think, to people. Not enough movement, and it's always good to move several ways.
Sure, yes.
Beyond atherosclerosis, if you have a way to break down fat, then you can do all sorts of interesting things with that, like treat fatty liver disease by means other than persuading people to lose weight, which would be the better. And there's some various other things like homozygous familial cholesterolemia, which is a mutation that really just gives you ultra fast atherosclerosis and really unpleasant amounts of cholesterol in your system. That would also be fairly treatable with if you could just give cells the ability to convert this cholesterol to something else. So this is actually a very SENS-like way of bypassing an enormous amount of uncertainty in the research and development community regarding what to do about atherosclerosis. You can actually reverse atherosclerotic lesions in mice by up to 50% using techniques that just speed up the way that macrophages work and in the lesions. But these things don't work in humans for some reason. People don't know why. So whenever you find something where you don't know why it's happening, you don't know why it's failing in people, you don't have a good vision of that, you don't even know where to look, that's the time to say, don't do that. Find a shortcut, do something different, build an artificial illusion. You know it's going to work the same way in mice and people. That's really the SENS way of looking at medicine. It's don't take the hard, long path, take the short, invented path. More people should do this. So.
Yeah, and so now that we have all those new technologies and those new strategies and approaches to tackle diseases, what do you think the time frame is that we will really have medicine that really can cure and prevent diseases like Alzheimer's and cancer? What's your estimate?
Well, I think this all depends on how good senolytic therapies turn out to be in humans. They are really, really good in mice. The early human trials are going very, very well. So this sort of suggests that if you can dial down chronic inflammation, you can greatly turn back arthritis, osteoporosis, atherosclerosis, Alzheimer's. All these things can be, they won't go away because there's other processes. The chronic inflammation, and a lot of that is generated by senescent cells, is so important. And I think senolytics are going to have quite a sizable effect on human lifespan once they get out there and people are using them more than they are right now. So, but as to have maybe effect, who knows? I'll guess 5 years of life expectancy, and we'll see how right or wrong I am. And that is the
And
step.
yeah, and also healthier lives, right?
The rest of it will be, the rest of it will come as it comes. But certainly, I think there will be a 10-year gap for the next SENS technology after senolytics, because everything is still fairly early in getting into companies that are clinical development. But it's still the case that when I'm 40 years from now, when I'm like 87 or something like that, I won't look anything like a present day 87-year-old. I will have zero inflation. I will have like my stem cells replaced in some places. I will have elastin added back to my tissues. I will have my immune system carefully guarded, my thymus restored. Atherosclerosis will be scoured out of my blood vessels, and so on. This is just the list for the next 10 to 20 years. Never mind what people are going to do in the 10 to 20 years after that. So at one point in time, it's really obviously the case that our middle ages would be very different from those of the people today, as it's also very hard to predict exactly how large the population next will be. But you have to believe that if the things that I just said are done to a person, that's going to be a noticeable difference in what it means to be 85 in terms of physiology and how to think about the rest of it.
So, and I guess if more money would be invested into this field, this could be excellent.
Usually, yes. So I think we might be reaching peak money for the field at its current size. We don't have enough entrepreneurs. And you can tell that because the companies in the space right now are structuring themselves in ways where entrepreneurs are less needed. So we have Ichor doing like five different spin-off companies. I'm doing 2 projects. I'd like to do more. Life Biosciences is just basically a way to get scientists to have companies around their projects without having to think about the horrible stuff scientists don't like to think about. Juvenescence is another way of just trying to aggregate all this stuff. Apollo Ventures is also basically a way to try to get companies formed without the scientists doing the work, without having to wait for it to magically happen because some entrepreneur figures it out. And that's really how our industry is structured right now. Any more money coming in right this instant, we either need a lot more entrepreneurs who actually know the field rather than just ordering money, or we need some time to swallow this amount of money and build the next generation of entrepreneurs who know what to do. Because the real danger is that we get so much money in here that a bunch of idiots join the field, do stupid things, waste the money, we get a crash. And honestly, I don't think it's just every field is its life cycle. It goes up and it comes down. But we should be working to make that less terrible than it might be. The way I like to go about that is trying to educate the entrepreneurs and educate the investors as to, the point that you should not be messing around with things like mTOR inhibitors because that's a waste of everybody's time. It's just not a large enough to care about. We should be doing the whole SENS list, Aubrey de Grey 101. And that's exactly what people should be doing. And Senolytics demonstrates that quite comprehensively. And we should do the rest of it. So, but the sooner we do that, the sooner we're all going to be healthier. If we can along the way stop messing around with these things and just tinker with metabolism a little bit in the end stage disease state to make it a little more resistant or a little better, the better. We want less of that. It's just not an inefficient use of time and money. Not that I have a strong opinion on this one.
So what do you think? What more could the government do? Because as you might know, that I'm working for a political party and I do advocacy, and we want that the government invests much more money into this. So what do you think the government could do with more investments, and if they would like educate more people and
Europe is not America, of course. And in Europe, it's viable to have single issue political parties, where even if you do not succeed in convincing the government to do anything different, they're doing right now. You are still carrying out very useful advocacy. In America, you can't have single issue political parties. The political setup is different, and in a continent where you could have the pirate party, then why not have a longevity party that can actually maybe get some stuff going and funds into research before it's past the point that it's a done deal and we still have things to do. And that seems plausible. I don't understand why that can't happen. I think Senolytics will be very helpful for that. As soon as the old people of the world start to realize that there is, these cheap drugs that will make their lives a lot better, then they will want to use them and they will ask for more. 5 years from now, it'll be a very different picture from now, because nobody knows anything about that now. 5 years from now, it'll be a household thing. Everybody will demand it.
Yeah, hopefully it will work in humans, because so far it only worked in mice, right? So
The human trials, there's one published. There's one ongoing that I know what the results look like. And there's another 2 or 3 ongoing where I don't know what the results look like, but the ones I do know about are very promising.
sounds great, yeah.
So I should say that this is the difference between SENS and not SENS. If you're doing medicine that's not the SENS repair philosophy, you are producing marginal effects that are highly variable between individuals. This is why things fail in trials. It's because you go to a phase 3 trial. A phase 3 trial is just for 1,000 people with a problem. And of course, there are 1,000 people with the normal variations between people. If you're doing something that is messing with metabolism to make it work a little differently in the disease state, well, everybody's sufficiently different, and your margin of effect is larger than your effect size when it does work. This is why trials look like they look. They're there to identify, does this thing have a useful marginal effect somewhere in there? And the answer is often no. But for SENS, repairing the fundamental damage of aging, the effect size is always going to be large and reliable, and conserved between mice and people for the most part. So we can be reasonably certain that senescent cells in people are causing a hell of a lot of chronic inflammation. We know that chronic inflammation causes disease aging. And we actually have examples in the community of people who have turned back their arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, you name it, they've improved their lives. And now we're starting to find that autoimmunity is also being linked by senescent cells. There's people who are benefiting in that way by taking Senolytics themselves. So this sounds just like the pitch from 10 years ago or 20 years ago, where some idiot is telling you, try this anti-aging thing. It actually works. And they're, of course, lying through their teeth. But, eventually something works. And we're here right now. Senolytics actually do really good work. Trial results will start to be published, more so over the next year or so, at which point, everybody can agree that, yes, this actually does really work. Everybody should be taking it.
What do you think that in 20 years, the life of somebody who is 80 or 90 then will look like?
It's a really interesting question, because what are the effects of senolytic drugs going to be at that point in time? And will we have cross-link breakers at that point in time? I think probably yes, but not widespread. Senolytics, on the other hand, will be very widespread by then. And that is sort of it's a really interesting question, because at that age you have a lot of damage that is not going to be repaired, even if you repair its causes. So things like atherosclerosis, your blood vessels end up so distorted, but even if you deal with atherosclerosis, they're not going back to the way they were. They're still weakened. You're still probably going to have a stroke. And the heart also gets misshapen. So apparently fixing that is possible, which is good news from earlier this year. And there are other things in your system where the damage has just gone too far at that age. But the people who are 80 and 90, 20 or 30 years from now, if they haven't been taking Senolytics, I don't think they're going to get more than just a few years out of it. If they have been taking Senolytics all along, then maybe they get another 5 years of life just from having very little inflammation. But it's really hard to tell. I mean, the only thing to do is to do the studies and see. Nobody can really tell you, okay, if we shut off inflammation in a human being in old age, what really happens, because we don't know the degree to which that is the contribution to fatal diseases versus, any of the other 100 contributions. And that's the challenge. That's a complete non-answer, I'm afraid. Waiting to see is the answer. It's the whole thing where nobody can do far wrong by going and trying to make things better here. More people are trying to make things better, the more likely it is that we'll all live longer and or have less age-related diseases at the time. And the only way to live longer is to have less age-related disease. There's no other magic way in which this can happen. You can't keep a damaged machine running longer effectively. You just get a few machines that miraculously manage to keep working despite the fact that they're almost falling apart. And the mortality rate at those ages is huge if you're not doing something about it. Will it be cut in half? I don't know. Nobody knows. We'll find out.
Yeah. So if somebody from the general public who sees this and who thinks this is a important movement or wants to help with this movement, what could somebody do who is not a scientist to help to hasten this development of effective medicine?
You can write, you can go to conferences, you can join the community in the sense of being a participant, learning what's going on. If you educate yourself, that's really the only way to get early access to many of these new drugs, new supplements that are found to do useful things. And educating yourself along the way, you usually find out if you want to do more. If there's a way you can help. And we've gone through the last 20 years, the answer always being give us money, or help find us money, or help persuade somebody to give us money. And I think that's probably going to continue to be the case for a while. It never hurts to have more money flowing into the non-profit side of this industry to try to keep the new discoveries coming. Because it is still the case that most of the research is not going in a useful direction. It's focusing on things that are not damage repair. So if you know scientists, persuade them to do that, help them provide money to do that. Scientists follow the money, just like most people do. And that sort of thing, we're still a community in which the non-profit side is comparatively small and needs expanding. And if you do nothing else, just learn a little bit and tell your friends. And tell your parents, because they probably need this stuff more than you.
So, yes, is there something else you want to tell the German public?
Germany has a population of, I think, several tens of millions of older people with serious inflammatory conditions who could, right now, today, make their lives considerably better by taking a single dose of senolytic drugs that would cost them about $100 to source from Chinese manufacturers and the local department store that sells them. Nobody knows this. This is criminal. I mean, if every time you pass somebody in the street who is bent over and arthritic, that person could be walking properly and standing up straight within a week of taking these drugs to remove significant amounts of senescent cells from their system. The ongoing trials right now tell us this. It is just criminal. This is ongoing. Nobody is doing anything about this.
So what is the difference between the senolytics that already exist and are available and between the senolytics that are developed right now by companies like Unity?
Sadly, very little for Unity. Sadly for Unity, very little. Because Unity has to compete with a $100 generic drug to be just as effective as their drug. There are companies like Ocean Biotechnologies who are producing more efficient therapies, like the suicide gene therapy that should actually kill a lot more senescent cells than the early drugs. The early drugs are doing about 25 to 50% of cells in some tissues. And you want to take cocktails of them because they're all tissue specific and work through different mechanisms. But really, no, it's a very weird industry because unlike most past drug development, the initial drugs are actually really, really good. The test drugs, the compounds they found in the databases, this is very unusual. It doesn't usually happen this way. So we have this fascinating situation where a tremendously effective mode of treatment is available to anybody. right, pretty much as soon as the researchers done their work, to say, yep, this stuff works. Go down to humans and go out and try it very, very cheaply. And a lot of humans going out and trying it, but not the millions of people that need more help and more guidance in finding their way to use Senolytics in advance of, like, you know, the inevitable approval, maybe 10 years from. If Senolytic drugs come out of the drug pipeline, and they're like, okay, $5,000 for this once-a-year treatment, and it isn't any better than the research compounds that you can go out and buy in a store or just get from a Chinese manufacturer for $100 for a single dose, one dose that you would take maybe once a year. The senescent cells don't accumulate very fast. I mean, that's just it's insane. Why are we not doing something about this? And that's my question for the community. It's all tens of millions of people helped right now. We could just figure out a way to help them. That's kind of my message for the German people and any other people. It's a worldwide issue.
Well, I guess you are taking Senolytics.
I'm not old enough.
Oh, okay. So you don't have to take.
I have certainly tried them because I'm not going to tell people to try something. I haven't tried this. So I've done them. I've taken Senolytic compounds, dasatinib, quercetin, fisetin, like the longevity combination. And you know, it gives you about the effect of a bad case of the flu for half a day. And apparently 50% of people don't even have that problem. And that seems a good trade. It's something that will very likely make your arthritis a lot better if you have arthritis, and diminish your inflammation and cause non-healing wounds to heal, and so on and so forth, through a long laundry list of what senescent cells do to people. We're at a big tipping point.
Right.
So, and I guess it's very true that I sound exactly like, you know, various people from past years who were telling people to go take more aspirin, or use some wonder drug here, there, or anywhere. But really, this time around, it's different. It really actually works. Legitimate rejuvenation therapy, it actually exists. This thing, it is a rejuvenation therapy in the absolute dictionary definition of the term.
Right. Well, so thank you very much for the interview.
It was a pleasure.